Liberty Delight Farms, local award-winning meats, raised right in your backyard. Steaks, chops, ribs, chicken. LibertyDelightFarms.com. Schedule your delivery today. Fresh meats, raised right.
Today is the last day that you can do it ahead of the November election. Hillsborough County, check with your local county's election offices because some of them have extended their hours today, so you can go in person and register or drop off your application. You can postmark it today and mail it in. I would not do that. I would make an effort to go to one of our 4 locations here. Hillsborough, there's 3 in Pasco County, there's several in Pinellas County, and go register in person if you still need to do that. It's very important. Obviously, the stakes are very high. Now, you have until October 24th, I believe, is the deadline to request a mail-in ballot, but if you go in person to register, request a mail-in ballot while you're doing it there as well. I've already got mine. Just need to find somewhere to drop it off at some point. And then early voting starts October 14th, and you can drop off your mail-in ballots at those polling sites for the early voting in addition to voting in person throughout the election. So, we're in the home stretch. 30 days to go. We're beyond the 30 days right now. It's October 5th, and the election's November 3rd, so a lot on the line. And don't forget to look at the local races as well. There are several runoffs that are still going on for some of the primary races that happened back in August, and also the general election itself. So big deadline today and more deadlines to come.
And one amendment you've got to vote against, and that's this one that's going to take the primary and say the top 2 vote getters, Republican or Democrat, are going to be the winners and going to move on to the general election. And that's crazy. I mean, you could have Democrats in every position. That's
right, and vice versa, because it's open.
Or Republicans,
to Republicans technically could end up going to a general election fight as opposed to a Republican and a Democrat.
Yeah.
Which would be that would be all hell would break loose if that were to ever happen. Felix, what else were we looking at? I know we have a latest on the Breonna Taylor case.
Yeah, there's some more disturbing news in this case because last week, Friday was dominated by the president's diagnosis with the coronavirus, but also the grand jury recordings of the Breonna Taylor case were released, and going through them, we're now learning more missing pieces that we did not learn about. And last week when I covered this, we were talking about the fact that there was some body cam video of a SWAT team officer in the apartment with one of the officers involved in the shooting of Breonna Taylor asking about shell casings. Now we know that there was another SWAT team officer who was assigned to this detail to execute the warrant on Breonna Taylor's apartment that had a body camera, tested it in his car, said it was functional, but then when they went in to do the raid, it didn't turn on. And so that is disturbing to me because, once again, that's now a second body camera that was never disclosed in the run-up to all this going on. And with the grand jury proceedings, they didn't even try and do it by Zoom or Microsoft Teams or have the people testify live in person. All they did was play their recorded statements that they gave to the police and the investigators right after the shooting and played them back to the grand jury, which means that none of the grand jurors could ask questions of any of the witnesses in this particular case. That is one of the fundamental things that goes on in a grand jury, is that they're allowed to ask questions of the investigators and the officers involved.
Also, in public opinion, when your body camera was working and you reported it as such working and everything was fine, and then it's not working minutes later, that's sketchy, and people are going to look at that and try to break it apart.
Yeah, and this is the whole problem I have with this whole process is the fact that, one, we know they never presented a case to indict anyone for the murder of Breonna Taylor. It was about going in there and basically charging the one officer, Officer Hankinson, with only the charges for threatening the lives and endangering the lives of the people in the apartment next door.
Yeah.
And that was it. And now this becomes more infuriating to me as a former prosecutor because they didn't even attempt to make it like a live grand jury proceeding. Just playing back video recordings of the people, that's called, one, it violates the Constitution, your right to cross-examine witnesses, the confrontation clause, which would apply for a defendant, but it's fundamental in the grand jury process because that's the purpose of the grand jury. They're the ones making the decision to indict someone, therefore they are allowed to ask questions, which in regular jury trials, you have the right to have jurors ask questions. A lot of judges don't do it in Florida, the way that it's set up. But in grand juries, that is one of the fundamental things that they do because they think of things that prosecutors may not bring up. Again, there's no defense attorney in there arguing for the defendant. The defendant can choose to make a statement, but they're not cross-examined. So that thing, the fact that they were displayed recordings of whatever video recordings that they did for the interviews right after the shooting, they're just like, well, we're just taking it at their word, and no one's questioning anything.
Yeah, I tend to think this was just a horrific error that you look back and think, I mean, you don't think the guy saying, I'm going to fire into that room and kill somebody or wound somebody or something like that, that it was just horrible mistakes. And then the guy shooting back and all that stuff like that. And you got the officers. I'd probably do the same. Well, I wouldn't fire into the next room, or next building, but it's just pretty scary circumstances.
It is, and it just raises a lot of questions about the whole no-knock warrant situation. If they had that approved, why did they, now they're with the narrative that they knocked and announced when there's only one witness that has come forward that said that they heard anyone knocking. You had Kenneth Walker, who's the boyfriend of Breonna Taylor, says, he basically said if they heard that they were the police, he would have opened the door for them and let them in. That was in his recorded statement that he gave to investigators. He's like, because we had nothing to hide. And we now know after the search was done, that's up in the air too. Was there a search done? Was there not a search done? We know there was no drugs or money found in the apartment, which was part and parcel of why they were trying to get into the apartment. But it raises a lot of questions about, one, the investigation itself, the grand jury proceedings, and in a time where everyone is questioning everything in the criminal justice system, especially with this case, why they didn't follow more proper procedures and be thorough about this and ram this through the grand jury proceeding only with recorded statements, it raises a lot of concerns. And fundamentally, it makes people question the grand jury process even more, because a lot of people say, well, it's done in secret. Why can't we know more about it? This was rare that they released the grand jury transcripts in the form of the recording. That was ordered by the judge. Only usually in federal court, you can actually release the grand jury proceedings in certain cases. So that's why this is disturbing. I think there's more to this story that's going to come up.
Yeah, probably so. And this is going to go on for a while, and the protesting and everything else along with it. But one of these days, we'll get her done.
We'll stay on top of it. That's what I'm here to do.
Yes, indeed. By all means. Are you going to be here tomorrow?
I will be here tomorrow.
Award-winning chefs love fresh, locally sourced products. Steaks, chops, ribs, chicken, delivered right to your door. LibertyDelightFarms.com. Schedule your delivery today. Fresh meats, raised right.